Okay, so this is a pretty short section. All I really want to do is just introduce a couple of packages that are really useful, and they're part of the tidyverse. So we're going to look at the stringr package, which is useful for working with strings, and then the forcats package, which is useful for working with factors. Again, these are part of the tidyverse, so if you can find cool cheat sheets. I'm not sure if they're in here. I guess they're not listed. Let's just look it up online real quick. So I'm just going to do stringr cheat sheet. So anyway, I just did a quick Google search and I found a cheat sheet for that package, and then obviously there's one similar for forcats. Okay, again, there's a lot more you can do with this than what I'm going to demonstrate here, but I just wanted to get you started. And again, I find a lot of these tools a lot more intuitive and easier to use than like the base R equivalents. So that's why we're talking about it. Okay, cool. So let's just play a little bit with these packages. So I'm going to read in the stringr and the forcats and the dplyr packages because we're going to use functions from those. Okay, so again, I'm going to read in some data here. This is my data set from my brother here, a bunch of movies with ratings and whatnot, so we have something to work with. Okay, and then I just printed here the summary just so we can see with the data. So we have movie names and director, the release year, the rating, the genre, and whether or not my brother has a copy of it or not. Okay, this first thing that we're going to demonstrate here is string detect. And what that does is it tries to find whether there is a sequence or a word or a string or whatever existing within a larger string, right? So what I'm doing here specifically is I'm trying to find all the movies names that have the word river in them from the movies data set. So we're doing that with this string detect function, which is from stringr. We're going to look for them inside of this column, movies.name, inside the movies data frame, and we're trying to find anything that has the word river in it. And then to actually get the movies out, so basically what this returns a true false field. So actually let's just run that real quick so you can kind of see what it does. So I'm just going to run this. And now if we go into this object, it has this river column where true is it had the word river in it and false is where it didn't. And then to actually get a subset out, I'm just using dplyr here, so I'm just doing movies, filter, river equals true. And that is the list of the movies with the word river in them. So Mystic River, Frozen River, River Runs Through It, Joan Rivers, the River Wild, a couple others, and then all the associated fields. So anyway, that's a cool way to search for a set of characters or a substring within a string, and then return the results. String length is used to return the length of a string. So let's have a look at that. So first off, if I just print this, you can see the string length here is 9 for this string that I made up. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's actually only 5, but I did this because I want to note that it does also count spaces. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 if you count the spaces. Okay, so here we're getting the length of the movie names, and then we're writing that into a column which is length. And again, that's going to count the spaces also. So let me just run that down here so we can have a look at it. Again, now we have a new column here, length, and this is the length. Again, counting spaces. And this isn't the word length, it's the character length, right? So like this movie, M is 1 character, up is 2 characters, so on and so forth. All right. And let me go back to this. And then now we can filter and find all the movies that have a length greater than 20 and count those. So there's a total of 324 movies in the list that are more than 20 characters in length, counting spaces. This is a replacement for the to upper base R function, so string to upper, and this basically just converts text into all uppercase. So here's just that for the head or the first few records in the table. One thing to note is you gotta be careful with when you're dealing with strings is the concept of characters that have special meaning. So for example, we've seen this before with file paths, but if you have a backslash, that has special meaning, so you have to deal with that. So with file paths, we tend to either, one, change the direction, so turn it into like a forward slash, or you can include the backslash escape character, so this is treated like a backslash as opposed to a special character. So that's something you got to be careful with when you're dealing with strings, is if you have special characters. Again, if we just ran this with one backslash, it's going to give us an error because that backslash has special meaning. So again, you have to swap it into a forward slash or double it up with the escape character. Cool. Okay, so that was just some simple examples for factors, and now we're gonna, strings. So in this last section here, we're just gonna look at a few examples with factors. Again, there's more things you can do. I suggest looking at the cheat sheets if you're interested in these topics like string and factor manipulation. Okay, so here I'm converting the genre into a factor. It's currently a string, and I'm doing that with as.factor. And then what this does is it counts the number of records in each factor level, and that's basically the same as this in levels, which gives you back this gives you the number of records in each factor level, and then in levels, which is base R function, gives you back the number of factor levels. So if we run that, we can see here that these are all the different factor levels and the number of records in them. Note that there were some issues with this. So there was one comedy record that wasn't capitalized correctly, so it showed up as different. So this is like case sensitive. So we'll clean that up here in a bit. And then if we look at the levels, we can see that there were 18 levels that were defined in the data set. This factor infrequent can be used to remove infrequent factor levels. So that now I'm just getting the common factor levels there, and it removes any that are not common. So there was a total of 6 that were used most commonly. I think you can set like a frequency threshold also as a cutoff of what means frequent. Okay, as another example here, again, I showed you this before, but if we do a subset where we don't have rows from all the original factor levels, it still will have all those factor levels in the list. So you have to run the drop levels. The drop levels equivalent from forcats is factor drop. So this does the same thing here. So if we run this, we'll get back our subset of factor levels. So now we're down to just the 3 levels there that we pulled out. Okay, this is a really useful tool, especially if you need to do some data cleaning. So this factor collapse allows you to collapse a set of factor levels into basically reclassify the factor levels into a shorter list. So here I'm basically taking the drama and the comedies and merging them into a fiction category, and I'm just turning the documentaries into a nonfiction category. So that's what this does, and then we end up with just 2 factor levels, so fiction or nonfiction. Okay, another option, and this is actually not from forcats, it actually comes from dplyr, is the recode function. So here I'm taking fiction, I'm recoding it just to F, and nonfiction recoding it to NF. Again, that gives us back just our F and NF factor levels. So recode comes from dplyr. It's another way to recode factor levels. And then the last part of this just has some notes about regular expressions. If you're going to work with strings a lot, you kind of have to figure that out. On the back end of the stringr cheat sheet, the whole second page is all about regular expressions. So it has to do with how you query strings and whatnot. So that's worth looking into if you plan on doing a lot of that type of work. Okay, anyway, that was a pretty short section, but I just wanted to go through briefly and talk about how how you can do some basic factor and string manipulation using some of these other tidyverse packages.